The movie Constitutions remain the most aesthetically pleasing starships for many viewers. We only ever saw 2 of them over the course of 6 films, although there were no doubt more off-screen. But from a practical point of view, there are issues. And in this video, we will ask where the Photon Torpedo magazine was located and whether there really was enough room for so many torpedoes. The original series Enterprise did not have a magazine space issue. The torpedoes were launched from some spot under the saucer, and so the deck there would have had enough space. The Enterprise D also did not have a space issue, as she had plenty of room for magazines galore. The refit Connie class, though, had their torpedo launcher in a particular location. A location, moreover, that raises a question. We have already addressed certain related aspects of this question in 2 previous videos, the Torpedo-Room puzzle and the Enterprise Dorsal problem, but in this video we will concentrate on the ship's magazine. And no, before you ask, before you even wonder, this is not AI. I am not AI. This video is not AI. This video does not use AI in any way. And yes, it is sad that I have to say this. But if you like this video, then why not press the like button, share the video on social media saying how amazingly brilliant it is, and subscribe to this channel. If you don't like this video, press the dislike button, watch the video again because it might get better on a second viewing, and subscribe to the channel anyway. 2 words, torpedo and magazine. Technically that's 3, but let it go. The Americans amongst you may know a famous quotation from US Naval Admiral David Farragut, after whom a number of starships were named. Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. This was during the American Civil War at the Battle of Mobile Bay. This is a reference not to the torpedo as we know it, but to what we now call sea mines. The torpedo as a self-propelled weapon running under the surface came later, but the word torpedo was initially used for stationary explosive devices called mines. The word itself comes from the Latin name for the electric ray. It means to be paralyzed or to stiffen, this reflecting the paralyzing effect of the electric shock on a human being. And magazine? Well, the word magazine comes to us via French and Italian, from the Arabic word for storehouse, magazine. With the coming of gunpowder and then cordite, it was inevitable that navies would seek to arm their warships with explosive weaponry, and this meant a need for an onboard storeroom, a ship's magazine. There are many historical examples of magazine explosions sinking warships. The USS Maine, a cruiser not a battleship, exploded in Havana Harbor and so ignited a war. The blame is thought to lie with a spontaneous fire in a coal bunker which, being all too close to a forward magazine, blew up the ship. The pre-dreadnought battleship HMS Bulwark went up off Sheerness in November 1914, whilst the dreadnought Vanguard met a similar fate in Scapa Flow 3 years later, leaving only 2 survivors from a crew of 845. And these were the accidents, completely avoidable had up-to-date safety and handling regulations been followed. In combat, the magazines could be just as catastrophic an issue. The battleships Arizona and Yamato were both sunk through enemy action, their magazines detonating. If the magazine of the Enterprise detonated, it would blast the ship in 2. But the yield of a typical torpedo of this science fiction era is reported to be somewhere in the kiloton range, so if they all went off, there would not be a ship left to be blown in 2. Which brings up a question. What happened to the torpedo warheads over Genesis? Did the self-destruct sequence jettison the torpedoes or detonate them? And if this latter was the case, why was there so much left of the ship to plunge into the atmosphere? In the second film, Wrath, we see the torpedo bay. We watch as a torpedo is lowered onto the torpedo carrier. It is dramatic. It fits the scene beautifully. It also takes rather more time than weapons and defense would ideally have in a combat situation, but we'll let that one go. We know the torpedo did not rise up from below as main engineering blocks any elevator system, and we see the torpedo lowered from above. From this, we can surmise that the ship's magazine is located somewhere above the torpedo bay. It cannot be at the top as the impulse drive spaces are in the way, and it cannot be from the front half of the dorsal because the vertical intermix chamber blocks access, as I explained in a previous video, the Enterprise dorsal problem. The after half of the dorsal is the only place a magazine could be. How much space does that give us? Now is the time for me to go mathematical. I have calculated that the dorsal is around 4.8 meters wide at its widest point. I get 10 meters at the top, 29 meters at the bottom, and a height of 10.7 meters, but will round up the latter to 11 meters for the sake of simplicity and my sanity. We must leave some space for the Jeffreys tube that very likely runs up the spine of the dorsal. We'll be generous and make the Jeffreys tube 2 meters. So our available space is 8 meters at the top, 27 meters at the bottom, and 11 meters in height, and 4.8 across. But as this latter number is subject to the narrowing of the dorsal towards the spine, we can round it down to 4.5. 4 decks of varying lengths. And my rough maths gives me the following deck space. I deck, or deck 9 if you like, 60.7 square meters. J deck, 85.5 square meters. K deck, 103.5 square meters. And L deck, 121.5 square meters. Divided equally, the height of 11 meters gives us deck heights of 2.75 meters each, which is reasonable, unless you're really tall, of course. How much space do we need? Well, how many torpedoes did the Enterprise carry? In Undiscovered Country, we look over Scotty's shoulder and see an inventory of the torpedoes carried by the Enterprise A. There are about 95. Scotty says that they are still fully loaded, so we have a maximum number for the Enterprise A. How much space would 95 photon torpedoes take up? Based on the torpedo casing used as Spock's coffin, a typical torpedo was 2.1 meters in length, some 75 centimeters in width, and 37 centimeters in height. We should expect some sort of storage cradle securing the torpedo, but also allowing rapid movement of said torpedo so it can be loaded. We might add the extra requirement of physical access by weapons technicians. Each torpedo would require, let's say, 2.5 meters by 80 centimeters by 40 centimeters. If the torpedoes are laid 5 widthwise and 19 lengthwise, then they would cover an area of 190 square meters. This is a lot of space, but it is about half the deck space available. This surprises me. When I started making this video, I thought there would not be enough space, but it turns out that there is plenty of room, although we must take into account the machinery and technician access, as well as the loading spaces any ship's magazine requires. We also have 2.75 meters of height, so we can stack the torpedoes 7 at a time. In fact, it's closer to 6.87, but we'll give ourselves breathing room. This gives us a floor space of only 31 square meters with 6 rows of torpedoes. Unless my maths are all over the shop, which is entirely possible. We must keep in mind that this number of 95 torpedoes belongs to the Enterprise A, not necessarily to the refit. Both may well be the same class, but a great deal of time has passed between Wrath and Country. Alterations and refits and changing priorities would have affected both vessels. There is also another question. How were the torpedoes loaded into the magazine? There doesn't appear to be any obvious hatches. I posed this question in my Enterprise Dorsal problem video, and someone in the comments section suggested they were beamed aboard by transporter. This is not impossible. The ship had cargo transporter pads. And yet we see cargo being brought aboard by work bee in the first film. So not all cargo need be beamed on to the ship. And there was an ongoing transporter problem aboard the Enterprise at this time. Would it be prudent to beam potentially explosive material into the ship? What if something went wrong? And things did go wrong, but they didn't live long, fortunately. So there we go. It turns out there would have been enough space in the dorsal for a ship's magazine. A magazine, moreover, containing as many as 95 photon torpedoes. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video, or at least didn't hate it.